Coming up on this podcast, intermittent fasting, 5-day fasting, water fasting, 1-day fasting, all sorts of fasting. If you've ever fasted before or you've wondered about it, I have got the perfect expert for you.
Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation.
Hello, welcome to Zestology. I'm Tony Wrighton, strolling around West London, recording this podcast intro as usual. And today it is fasting with a return guest on Zestology. Don Gordon's been on before, and I saw him a month or two ago at the Health Optimization Summit in London. We didn't have time to record a podcast then because we were so busy. He was helping out at the Prolon stand because he is an expert in fasting, not just 5-day fasting mimicking diet fasting, which is what he's spoken about before and what he will talk about today as well, but also all sorts of fasting relating to nutrition and functional health. In this podcast, we talk about how trends have changed over the last few years in terms of there's some things in this world. When I started this podcast in 2014, 2015, there are some things that loads of people seem to do that they don't do so much anymore. Bulletproof coffee, I feel like it was a much bigger thing then than it is now. These days, nobody really, we talk about this in the podcast, but nobody really bothers putting a load of butter in their coffee now. Because if you're going to intermittent fast, you just might as well intermittent fast until lunch. I feel like another thing which we didn't mention in the podcast is a lot of people used to eat bacon in this world. And now people have sort of wised up to the fact that maybe a lot of bacon isn't quite such a good idea. I don't know, I don't eat bacon anymore. So we talk about changing trends, and we talk about the things that aren't trends but have just remained constant in this world, the things that work so well. And Don has sort of trained up and become an expert in the fasting mimicking diet. So that is a diet where your body thinks you're fully fasting for 5 days, and all the magical stuff that goes with fasting starts to happen, including, of course, autophagy, when your cells die off and renew themselves and you really start to detox well. And Dr. Valter Longo created the fasting mimicking diet, which is basically a diet whereby you are having some stuff to eat, but not loads. It's not very much. I mean, I've done this 5-day fasting mimicking diet before, but at least you're not just drinking water for 5 days. And that's what Don's an expert in. So Prolon is Dr. Valter Longo's company, and it is amazing. It is like receiving a MacBook in the post or something. You get this beautiful box with 5 days of food in there. And if you're interested specifically in the Prolon podcasts I recorded, you can go back over the archives, because when I did it before, I recorded a little mini podcast each day for 5 days on the Prolon. We love it in our house. Faith's done it more times than I have. She loves it, and she's now done the Prolon 1-day fast as well. And it is a great way to reset. Because I am a classic ectomorph, so I struggle to put on weight, and I lose weight very easily. It is quite a good way to lose weight, which is brilliant for a lot of people, and my wife quite likes it. But I don't want to lose weight, so that was one reason that I found the 5-day fasting mimicking diet quite a stretch. But in terms of the way I felt and what it did to my body, I thought it was great. So that's enough preamble anyway. There's just so much to talk about with Don. I mean, we could do entire podcasts which didn't talk about fasting at all, but I hope that sets up today's podcast very nicely. He's a big name in the health space here in the UK, and it's an honour and a pleasure to have him on Zestology, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So here is Don Gordon on fasting and other stuff on Zestology. Don, great to see you again.
And it's great to be here, Tony. Really, always a pleasure to knock heads and in this space with you.
Yeah, and we obviously met again at the Health Optimization Summit. We didn't quite have time to record a podcast there because you were so busy and so was I. It was a brilliant event, wasn't it?
It was really super. I think Tim has excelled himself, and he's off to international shores to upgrade even further. But yeah, it was. I think the quality of exhibits was really good. There was some really beautiful cutting edge products and modalities there, which were kind of like new and fresh. So it's always good to see new things, isn't it? As much as old favourites.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you because I have been reflecting on the things that are sort of passing trends in this world and the things that stick around. Because the first conference or summit like that I went to was the Bulletproof Conference back in maybe 2015, 2016 in the US. And everyone was drinking bulletproof coffee there. And now no one really drinks bulletproof coffee, but still everybody's into fasting, which is obviously your area of speciality. It's just quite interesting, isn't it, how that particular phase just hasn't lasted. People just don't really do bulletproof coffee anymore.
Yeah, and I think, look, even the progenitor of it, who is our American compadre, he's stepped away from that now, hasn't he, in terms of the product? And so I think that with products, they can come and go, but some stand the test of time. And I think that what's really interesting is this whole concept of fasting, I think we really need to try and redefine the description of fasting. I think there's a new and yet not so new description which I'm hearing now, and this is the I don't think it resonates with you, but I think it's the physiological and also the molecular aspect of fasting.
Yeah,
it's almost like not fasting as you know it. This is something new, but it's something I think that the likes of Professor Walter Longo and a good number of others, whether it be Dave Sinclair and others, are all beginning to think, oh, okay, so these nutrient sensing pathways that we're talking about and the molecular impact that it has on the body, we influence some mechanisms associated with fasting, which is conventionally perhaps water or abstinence of food. But now we're thinking, oh, we can do this stuff with food.
Yeah.
So that concept, I think, in terms of defining terms about, is what kind of fasting are we talking about here, right?
Yeah. It's just so interesting, isn't it? Because the concept behind bulletproof coffee was always fasting, and people are still doing that. But actually, it turns out that it's very few people who actually, once they start getting into intermittent fasting, for example, can't last until mid-morning or lunchtime.
Yeah.
And then it's really interesting because obviously with Prolon, that's a way of a 5-day water fast, but not doing the full fast, which I cannot imagine doing a 5-day water fast with absolutely no food at all. So that's completely different, isn't it, what you're offering there?
Yeah. And look, I think it may be all right for the enlightened or the brave or a robust few, but the number of people that can really, hack that one, few and far between, right? So accessibility for the layperson is quite challenging if you're going to be on a couple of day or 2 or 3 even. Yeah. We may stretch it for a day or 2, but once you get past day 3, then I think it becomes increasingly challenging. I think that's one of the real kind of benefits that Walter Longo's research has brought into the floor with that the fasting mimicking diet approach. It's about accessibility and making it attainable for people to get some real tangible and science evidence-based research benefits without the real stress, strain, or a hunger or sense of deprivation, which really is that real stuff.
You still sort of get a hunger, Don, a little bit.
Yeah. But the nourishment, the nourishing effect.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Even with those little few calories that are coming in, it's the balance.
Yeah.
And the nuance in that balance, I think, is where the Nutri technology is really coming to its fore now with the products that, Prolon are now bringing into the space, which is the fasting bar and the 1 day fast reset, which I gave to you at the show.
Yeah.
So those new developments are all on the back of this kind of technology around fasting mimicking. If we trick the body and get some health benefits, who's not going to be up for that?
Well, exactly. Yeah. And have you found personally, it's really interesting, as I was sort of joking there, it's not exactly easy, but it's a lot easier than I can't possibly imagine doing it without Prolon. But over time, it seems to get easier. And actually, my wife has just finished Prolon again last week. And I said to her she did it Monday to Friday. I said to her on Thursday night, I'm very impressed with you. You haven't been making a fuss about this at all. When I was doing it, I let everybody know how brave I was being. But she seems to sort of get on with it. And I wonder whether over time, the more you do it, the more used to it you get. It's just another Prolon fast.
Absolutely. I think that what I've seen over the last 3-4 years now is that people come back to it again and again, whether it be, a couple of times a year or, 4 times a year, or even a little reset that they'll pop in after they know that they've been veered off course. And what's happening, I think, is that people like the way it makes them feel.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard back from clients that I've worked with and from other groups. It's the sense of lightness.
Yeah.
And I think that lightness also is almost an emotional lightness. So I think that's really curious because, a lot of people carry a lot of emotional weight as much as physiological weight. And I think that what Prolon does, or what the fasting mimicking diet approach does, is allows people, it frees up a lot of the mental and also the weight that comes with, shall I have an avocado? Shall I have a grapefruit? What am I going to have for breakfast? What shall I have for supper? Should I leave space in between? All of that thinking and that mental energy that we do divert, aside from the kind of digestive, metabolic processes that are going on. It's hard to break down food. It takes a lot of energy, and the brain takes up a lot of energy too. So if we can lighten the load, I think that is something to really be aware of and have in our thinking when we come to this kind of fasting mimicking diet space. I know that when I've done it, I found I'm always thinking about food because I'm always preparing plans and programs and managing macros, and it's like all that energy takes up a lot of bandwidth, right?
Yes.
So when I get to not think about anything at all, and it's in a box, and I open it up, and I don't think, will it, won't it? I just know the way it's going to make me feel, it's going to be lighter.
Yeah. And you mentioned that reset. We went to, since I saw you last, we went to Glastonbury the next week, which is why my wife wanted to, Faith, who you met, why she wanted to do it after Glastonbury.
I did say after, didn't I? So I did say after, so we have a reset after, but don't do before. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's just, I guess for you, it's brilliant working with Prolon because it seems to be something that more and more people are getting interested in. You talk about some of those, we've been looking at some of those trends that have spiked and gone down a little bit. And this one is one that more and more people seem to be aware of some sort of fasting on a daily or weekly basis. And that's got to be good for you.
I think, look, what happens is that I get to see the results in the people around me. And that is obviously gratifying for me because it's not about me. It's about actually others sharing the knowledge, the understanding and the tools that help people reduce their HbA1c down from 104 to 54, which I've seen up close and personal. And I've seen the
what's that, Don? What's HbA?
That's the thing that measures your blood glucose over time. So for people who have type 2 diabetes or borderline diabetic, they want to reduce what's called their HbA1c. It's the measuring tool that the primary care uses to measure how well you're doing in terms of blood glucose management. So we want it to be reduced down to below 52, something like that. And with people who have difficulty around managing blood sugar, and they'll find that reading will be too high. And so they'll try to use perhaps prescriptive medication to reduce it. Or they can also do it with food. We've heard this maxim, haven't we? Food is medicine, and it's prescriptive. Well, it is very powerful, and so is the power of fasting. Walter Longo talks about it. He says, I don't think people realize just how powerful a health intervention, fasting mimicking approach can be. And yes, certainly circling back to your question around getting easier, yes, it does get easy because the body adapts to what you give it.
Yeah.
So if you're giving it good information, likelihood is you're going to get some good data back. And that data is a physiological feedback. And so I think that people find when they start to use ketones for fuel, as opposed to what they've been using historically, maybe too much glucose or too much sugar in the diet, by dialing that down, they find that they can generate these ketones after day 3 of a prolonged fast.
Yeah.
And so with that comes, the mental clarity, because the brain loves ketones for fuel. And so if you're constantly challenging your hormones to balance the production of insulin or dialing insulin response down, then the body very intelligently switches to using fat for fuel. And that is a targeted way of losing fat where you don't want it on the body, around the vital organs, for example. And so, if you can constantly challenge your physiology in a good way with a fasting type of regime, then you'll find that you can regulate your fat levels. Too much sugar, too much fat, too much insulin, fat storing hormone. So I think if you keep going back periodically throughout the year, maybe twice or whenever, you can do this, what's called metabolic switching.
Yeah. That's the dream, isn't it? Really. And then Don, I mean, obviously you now go to a lot of these big health events around the world, really, where you are chatting to all sorts of people in this space. And I know your interests extend a lot beyond Prolon and fasting. What are some of the other things you're excited by at the moment? You've got so many things on the go. I know we were just talking about Zach Bush, and Ion, is it called, before we started the podcast?
Yeah, the microbiome. Yeah. Well, I love the anything to do with microbiome and microbiotic health. I'm really into. So I think the Ion product is a fabulous product, which is not a probiotic, by the way. It's just this kind of amazing
it's
element.
Soil, isn't it? Isn't it taken from soil?
From the soil. I'm just looking at the label here. I'm thinking, it's just coming out of the earth, right?
Yeah.
So this is just something that's come from the soil, and they've done an extraction from trace minerals. Yeah. So he's found out that if you restore the earth, it gives you what you need. And that's where, when we were kids or we were growing up, we were scrabbling around in the dirt, and we were getting all of these kind of health preserving, immune enhancing exposure to the elements around us, and that made us more robust because we were exposed to those elements of the earth. And so he's kind of worked that out, and it comes from ancient soil. But when the soils are depleted through, pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, which is a big one, and all these other byproducts, then it causes all sorts of problems in the food chain as much as anything else. So I love what Dr. Zach Bush is doing, but also there's some rather smart liposomal products that are coming onto the market as well, which I quite like. The encapsulation in terms of certain products in a liposomal capsule is something that's quite exciting in terms of delivery mechanism, in terms of effectiveness. So slightly different to, where it goes under the tongue, like a homeopathic thing. If you can preserve it, nutrients in a capsule that doesn't get broken down, but gets delivered into the cells, whether it be glutathione, which is the master antioxidant, whether it be vitamin D or resveratrol or NAD, there's a particular group of products that I'm really liking, which I've been testing and doing a little case study work with a few of my clients in terms of their vitamin D levels, for example. So I've been doing a lot of vitamin D testing in practice, which I've found really useful. Even the people that I've been testing have been suboptimal, and they've been supplementing.
No way.
Yes. So this is super interesting. And also, I think different population groups, we need to understand that different population groups have different levels of melanin in the skin.
Of course.
So if we're living in the Northern Hemisphere and we come from the Caribbean, then we ain't getting that much sun.
Yeah.
And
so is that a case of you need more sun you need to absorb more sun to make the same amount of vitamin D?
That's right. That's right. And so I think there's lots of nuances here in this particular area, and it's one that I'm sort of leaning into at the moment, because I think the tests that I can get tested within 15 minutes. So if I rocked up at your place, I could do a vitamin D test on you, and I could give you the results in 15 minutes. So that gives immediate barometer on where people are a couple of times a year. So what do we like during the winter months, or even when we come out of winter? Where are our vitamin D levels? And then we might do it later on in the year to see if we are absorbing as much as we need to. And so I've seen people who have been suboptimal, critically low levels of vitamin D, and these people have been supplementing with vitamin D. So the levels, I think, that people are being exposed to or not, and also the form that they're taking it in. If they're a perimenopausal woman, are taking it with vitamin K, for example. Are we getting calcium and magnesium? Those three work in partnership together. So I'm sort of interested in that sort of aspect of things, where you're looking at vitamin D levels and this liposomal product. So this liposomal product is very nice. It comes from Hineo, and we're doing some interesting work. I think I might be producing a little article for Functional Sport Nutrition magazine on this, hopefully, around vitamin D levels, master antioxidant for performance and recovery. So that's one of the other things that I'm quite liking at the moment, the liposomal aspect of things, and the ingredient and the particular nutrients that they're putting into them, whether it be NAD, which David Sinclair is big on, and resveratrol. And how that impacts, our mitochondrial health. Yeah, I've had him on this podcast. And do you take resveratrol or NAD? I have been trying that just recently as well. Yeah. Around my kind of exercise output and thinking, is it going to make a difference? Isn't it? So, how am I showing up? Am I feeling recovered? Which is what all athletes are looking for, is all about recovery. Yeah. So, yes, the NAD, yes, the glutathione, and yes, resveratrol, but taking them separately, not at the same time. So a graduated sort of phase, if you will. So I can then track what's working and what the kind of best kind of profile or mixture is to put into play. Yeah.
Interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that my podcast partners today are Bioptimizers and Magnesium Breakthrough. If you would like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and a calmer, more stable mood, and who wouldn't want that, then you need to make sure you're supplementing with magnesium daily, but not any magnesium, because about 75% of us are magnesium deficient, but there are actually 7 unique forms of magnesium. You need to get all of them if you want to experience its calming, health-enhancing effects. That is why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. And I took one probably about an hour ago. I take it twice a day sometimes, maybe once so far today, but often twice a day. It's the only organic, that's important, full spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium. And, I've been partnering with Bioptimizers for a couple of years now, and they've had a couple of months off the podcast, and they are now back, and I'm very pleased about that. So you can go to magbreakthrough.com/Zestology. And even when they weren't partnering with me, I was still taking Magnesium Breakthrough. Go to magbreakthrough.com/Zestology and you can get a discount if you use Zestology 10, and that works worldwide as well. If you're in the UK, you can go to the UK Biooptimizer's site and use that same discount code, Zestology 10. So better sleep, more energy, stronger bones, healthier blood pressure. For me, it helps me sleep at night and relax and definitely get less inflamed as well. Use the code Zestology10 at the website magbreakthrough.com/Zestology. Now back to the show.
And one more on supplements. I don't know whether you know Leslie, who runs a spermidine company.
Yes.
Oxford
yes.
Health Span.
Yeah.
Have you tried spermidine?
Yes, I had some little samples given to me, I think, on the side. He reaches over to the side. Yeah. Autophagy, cognition and cell renewal. So I was given these little container.
Right. Yeah.
With them in. So that is another thing that I'm curious about in terms of longevity. There's a good degree of science with that. For me, I haven't gone the full tilt with that to find out how it's showing up. But yes, I think that spermidine has got some interesting characteristics about it.
Yeah. And then when we met originally, we were talking about some interesting workouts that you do. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I always wanted to sort of explore that more with you, and we never quite got into it.
Okay, so I got to become a student with somebody called Master Titan from the Far East.
Yeah.
And he was doing something called therapy, which is neuroendocrine therapy. And it uses a kind of, did I send you a tearable?
You did, yeah, but we just haven't actually had the chance to connect and use it.
Wow. Okay. So, well, this Saturday, maybe I should send you a link and you can dip into, have a little eyeball on the little.
I'd love to. Yeah.
That I've been running. I'll send you that little link. And if you've got the board, we have to make sure it's pumped up. But what he's been doing and what I've been using it for is actually with I think 3 or 4 years ago now, I started to work with some people with Parkinson's.
Yeah. And
as we know, there's an issue with degeneration in the cells in the brain. And movement, a lot of what happens is that they get a lot of muscle stiffness comes into the body. The medication that they're on is quite invasive, but we want to get blood flow to the brain. So this kind of ball that we designed and used, and I haven't got one in the space with me because I didn't know you were going to throw me that. But the ball it's a ball, a sort of size of football, and inside it are about 150 ball bearings. And what you do is you get these tiny balls to move inside the ball, to create what's like a centrifugal force, which stimulates circulation. So you can spin it in different directions, and what that means is you're stimulating circulation for the body and blood flow in the body. So if you can stimulate in a forward motion this circular movement, then you can get blood flow up to the brain. So really, really super interesting. So he's been using it in rehab in his clinics in Japan and in Hong Kong. And so I've been trying it with groups of people. And I find that people who can't get to the gym, don't like going to the gym, can't work out for more than 20 minutes, are compromised physiologically, they need to, what do they do? So this is a tool which I found has got a good degree of practical use. And when we say neuroendocrine therapy, what it's doing is actually stimulating 12 meridians that mirror the central nervous system in the body, but 12 key meridians in the body which stimulate organ function. The heart, the lungs, the lymph. So if you can stimulate with certain movement patterns the movement of the ball, then you can stimulate neuroendocrine feedback in the body. It's super, super useful. So I've been using it as my little go-to if I've only got 12 minutes.
Right.
All right. So when people see these little tiny habits that we like to give people to do who are just time poor, they're busy, haven't got enough time. Have you got 12 minutes? If you've got 12 minutes, you can do this super little mini workout. And I think I should share a link with you to the promo video where you can see it being used as well. I don't know if I've shared that with you, have I?
I'm not sure, but please do share it.
Share that with for the class so that you can get an eyeball on what it looks like. But I found it super, super good. And what I found is that from a cardiovascular perspective, I can get the heart rate up just by literally standing on the spot, spinning these balls, moving it up and down the body. So I'm stimulating circulation. So my heart rate goes up to, similar to what I would use to doing a kettlebell swing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it
sort of sounds like it's got elements of Qigong, but can be more physical at times.
Absolutely, it has. He's actually developed it on the foundation of particular Qigong type movements, where you're simulating movement pattern with certain finger movements and body movements, and the feedback comes with the ball. So if you have the ball in a certain position, then you can get feedback. Yeah. And it's visual as much as it is movement and awareness and body weight observed. So this is the neuroendocrine therapy path that keeps us in tune, and it's lovely because it's also stimulating alpha brainwave
great
feedback.
Yeah,
so you've got 150 balls, but can you spin just one ball?
Yeah.
So that is really kind of deep state, and
that's one of the things. Obviously,
I'm trying to get him to come across to the Health Optimization Summit.
Are you
a demo? Because I think if he did a workshop there, I think it'd go down. Really, really well.
Yeah.
We've got to drag him across from Hong Kong to do that.
Oh, superb! Yeah. Yeah, I mean, getting into that alpha brainwave state is something I think a lot about with my NLP and the hypnosis that I do with people. And, it's just so beneficial, isn't it? And when you're a type A sort of high achiever or just running around like a headless chicken like I am, it's so needed.
Absolutely, it is. And I read that resonates with me. And that's why I find it so useful just to knock out for 5 or 10 minutes and tune in, as it were, with this particular tool. It's a really good modality.
Brilliant. Well, at some point, I hope to join you on a Saturday and we'll do a class. That'd be great.
Love to see you got the ball now. It's come on down. It'll be good.
Super.
It'll be good.
So, Don, I've asked you this before, but I ask everyone at the end of the podcast, what is one book you recommend and one tip for living with more energy? Have you been reading anything good recently? Anything to recommend?
Do you know what? I wasn't prepared for this, but almost by default, I am, because I've got this book.
Oh, wow. The Ultimate Guide to Methylene Blue. Okay. I had some of that at Glastonbury, actually.
So it's a remarkable hope for depression, COVID, AIDS, other viruses, Alzheimer's, autism, cancer, heart disease, cognitive enhancement, pain, and the great transition to metabolic medicine.
Yeah, brilliant. Good.
By Barry Sloan. So that's my little book that I've got on the side just now. So someone introduced me to it and said, "Oh, have you tried it?" Because they were using it themselves. I said, "No, I'll have a little look."
Yeah,
and
good.
So my interest has been piqued, and maybe we'll tune in for that one at a later stage. But you say you tried it at
Yeah, I took some to Glastonbury. I've used it before, and I just sort of is it their long old days at Glastonbury? You're hiking around. I mean, you walk a sort of a marathon's length of steps, and I don't really drink that much. I just thought, it'd be nice to have a little pick me up, so I bought some of the prescriptions and took them. They were great.
So there we have it. I think there's a lot more to learn about it. What form it comes in, because I had a little look online. Oh, can you get it online? Yes, you can.
Yes.
But as we all know, not everything that you get online is authentic.
Totally agree. Yeah.
So we need to be mindful about that. So I wanted to do a little bit of digging, a little bit of homework behind it. It's always advisable, isn't it?
Well, that's why I love chatting to you, because you are so passionate about all this stuff, but you're really thorough as well, and you just throw yourself into everything that you are interested in, and it comes across.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a curious cat, as they say, and that's always been my mantra. I'm always learning new things. I'm constantly curious.
Yeah,
so, sharing it with other people is my passion. So that's why it's so good to rock up with people like yourself and talk about what's fresh, what's effective, and useful.
Yeah. So one more question: what is one more tip for living with energy and vitality? You've given us a lot already. It might be one that you've given us already or a new one. What have you got that's exciting you at the moment?
For me, or just generally speaking?
I think whatever's relevant. Obviously people listening to this will be looking to maybe apply it to their own lives. So if it's something that works for you, that would be great.
I think the breath work is becoming more and more topical, isn't it? But there are so many variations of it out there. And there's one particular pattern which I learned, which is called diacath breathing. And that's, you've got a tantium point, which is like 3 fingers above your belly button. So if you've got 3 fingers, you stick them on top of your belly button, and then you focus on that point in the body with the breath. So people say, focus on the breath coming in and out. With this, you focus on this particular point region on the body. So I think for me, I've been diving into that just recently. I found it particularly useful. It's like a mini not so much a body scan, but it gives a focal point and focus. And I think that the diacath breathing is something that actually is something I discovered from Patrick Holford and his another book, which is called not the chemistry of Natural Highs.
Yeah.
Natural Highs, I think is called. So there's another book. But that diacath breathing, I think the breath work, there are so many different varieties out there. Find one that fits you and that really gives you the energy that you need or the rest recovery you need to show up fresh the next day. And I think for me, I'm trying to be more consistent with whatever type of breath work is working for me. But if it's Wim Hof or whatever it might be, a diaphragmatic breathing, I think the breath work is something that is maybe has been neglected for so long, but it's maybe coming more to the fore. But I'm a big fan of this diacath breath work for me just now. You can Google it. I'll send you a link maybe, and
brilliant.
Share that with your readers. So that's my little energy pep.
Yeah. And I know we've discussed it before, but breath work is so important to me. And like, firstly, Qigong, but then I found this brilliant app called Othership. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not.
Othership. Yeah. I mean, it's just superb. It's all about breath work, but set to music. And it is so much fun. And you just, personally speaking, feel amazing.
I love
they've
that.
They've got all different types of breathwork, so you could probably search for the sort of breathwork that you're into, and you might find it. They've got couples breathwork, which we've tried, which is good fun, and we've got they've got all sorts of things going on there. So yeah.
I love the idea of the couples breathwork. That sounds inviting.
Yeah.
Actually, so Othership.
Yeah.
Othership. Okay.
Don, great to talk to you.
And you.
And where can people find more about you and everything you do, and obviously Prolon as well?
Well, just you can DM me on Functional Nutrition Don on Insta. So Functional Nutrition Don is probably the best place.
Yeah.
You can search for me. You'll find me there. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Elite Wellness on LinkedIn, or with Functional Nutrition Don on the WhatsApp. So if you're searching just now, you'll be able to see me on those two
brilliant
channels. Yeah,
Don, you're a bit of a ledge. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me, Tony. And we'll see you in the next event, or maybe on Saturday.
Yo, that would be great. That would be great. That is it for this week's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Plenty more good stuff coming up over the summer. I just want to say a quick thank you to our podcast partners. Firstly, Bioptimizers and Magnesium Breakthrough. And if you go to magbreakthrough.com/Zestology and use the code Zestology10, you can get 10% off. And in this hot weather, because it is hot where I am right now, and it's not always hot where I am right now in the UK, I feel like you do need extra magnesium. I've been doing a lot of hiking recently, and if I don't take some extra magnesium after a long day of hiking, I sort of feel like I get a bit jerky-legged, which isn't probably the technical term, but is the only way to describe the fact that my body needs a little bit more magnesium, and I've probably lost a lot of electrolytes, minerals and nutrition from all the sweat and the exercise that's been going on. So So Mag Breakthrough is the solution, I think, and obviously Bioptimizers have a whole range of supplements, and people have caught on to the fact that this discount, Zestology 10, works for all the Bioptimizers products. It's Mag Breakthrough that are the partners for this show, but you can use the Zestology 10 discount code for any Bioptimizers product, and honestly, I'd be delighted if you do, because the more times that you use a discount code that I mention on this show, the more that my partners like to stay on with me. And it doesn't bring in a massive amount of money having these podcast partners, but it does help to keep the lights on at Zestology. So thank you for listening to this bit at the end. Also, thank you to Well Easy. I am so delighted to be partnering up with Well Easy. They do a fantastic job of offering healthy groceries and deliveries at very affordable prices. The average family saves 250 quid a year with Well Easy, which is absolutely brilliant. And I'm going to be honest, I think we save a lot more than that on our healthy groceries. I've mentioned some of my favourites recently. We love the Nomato sauce. We love the Unrefined bars. All the hunter and gather stuff is there. And if you are like me, you're basically on a hunter and gather drip. With the mayos that they do and the healthy ketchups and that sort of thing, all of that pretty much 20% off the whole lot. So it's brilliant. Go to welleasy.co.uk and use the code Zestology10 for £10 off your first order. So that'll take the edge off nicely. And it's worth just doing in order to see, because you get it in a couple of days and you will quickly notice the difference between that and using Ocado or wherever you go, or Whole Foods, or wherever you go normally to buy your healthy stuff. They also do, if you're like me, you also use stuff like Ecover dishwasher tablets. Well, that's 15 quid every time you buy Ecover dishwasher tablets. So if you can immediately get 2 or 3 quid off that, it's quite satisfying, isn't it? They do all the cleaning products for the house. We even get our loo roll there. Go to welleasy.co.uk and use the code Zestology10. That is it for this podcast. Thank you for listening. See you next time.